Hello and welcome to the Pinstripe Post, a New York Post Sports Yankees digital show where I get to talk to Joel Sherman and ask him all kinds of questions about the New York Yankees. We're here recording on Tuesday, April 23rd, because yesterday the Yankees played a day game. And Joel, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. I was on jury duty. We didn't know when we'd be doing the show this week, but the good folks of the city of New York decided that they only needed me for one day and they didn't want me around to do any trials. There was a big trial going on about 100 feet from where I was. I didn't catch the guy's name.
I was a little concerned, I'd be honest with you, when you told me beforehand that you were on jury duty and I knew what was going on this week in the city. And I was like, oh no, Tom. And I told Tommy, I'm like, I don't know, man. Part of me thinks that Joel might be one of these special jurors picked out, but thank God you weren't. We got you here now. Also, I want to make sure, and maybe I'm catching you a little bit. If you are lying about jury duty, were you happen to be the guy Hunter Windelstedt was yelling in the stands? Were you above the dugout there? Was that you?
No, I was sitting on the most uncomfortable wood benches in America. Apparently, they decide to use a torture apparatus if you're on jury duty. So,
real quick, your reaction. Did you see the Hunter Windelstedt ejection to Aaron Boone? Is that one of the most egregious ejections you've ever seen in MLB?
It's ridiculous. So let me point out one thing, which is if you're an arsonist and you're near a fire, even if you don't commit the fire, sometimes you might get blamed and whatever, like at least looked at suspiciously. Aaron Boone has a history of yapping to and not stopping. And, that's your history. You put yourself near that fire. Having said that, I'm a big one for, this is a longer discussion some other time about rule changes where teams should just be given 5 timeouts a game and you could use them for whatever you want. If you want to use them for 5 replay challenges, for any replay, ball strike, etc., or going out to the mound. Like if you really like make it like the other sports where you got to think like, is this worth a timeout or not to use right here? And you could have used a timeout where they could go to the video replay where it would obviously show, unless Aaron Boone's a ventriloquist, it wasn't him. It wasn't a good day for Hunter Wendelstedt. I sitting in jury duty because of how I was able to watch the first 2 innings on my phone. I didn't get the last few innings. His ball strike stuff was awful also. So the day game might have started a little too early for Hunter and he wasn't in a good mood. And you like to think that if everyone is held to account, that this umpire will be held to an account by the league in some way, who will say, Hunter, this was not great behavior here. Because I think so I sent a text to our associate sports editor, Mark Hale.
Yeah.
During it, I said, he could diffuse this by at the end of the game, walking down to Boone's office and saying to Boone, I blew it, Aaron. I strongly believe this was you who was saying this. I've seen the video now. I screwed this up. What would Aaron Boone have said in the postgame? He would have said, hey, we all make mistakes. He made a mistake. It had nothing to do with the outcome of the game. We didn't hit. That's why we lost. We didn't lose because of Hunter Wendelstedt. Instead, Hunter Wendelstedt doubled down on it with some ridiculousness about the managers in charge of the dugout. I've thrown out plenty of people, so I know where voices are coming from. He should work on like that because he apparently doesn't know where voices are coming from.
No, he apparently does, and that's the best part. You say Aaron Boone's responsible for the dugout. Meanwhile, it's a fan that's not even in the dugout that said something that caught your attention when you did tell Aaron Boone to stop speaking and you threw him out. It was
for shits and giggles. The New York Post had, as always, multiple people there. We try to interview the fans, and the Yankees and their security arm stopped us from interviewing the fans because they're the worst. But go ahead.
Well, this is a show for the fans, so Joel, let's not try to turn all of them off here. Let's go to first pitch.
No, I'm talking about the Yankees.
The Yankees.
The Yankees are the worst. They wouldn't let us get to the fan who we would have been able to hear from, except for the Yankees are the worst. But go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we
the
saw
worst to deal with. The worst to deal with if you're trying to cover things properly.
Joel is hot and fresh, ready to go on Tuesday morning. All right, so Joel, let's go to first pitch though and talk about this Yankees offense that struggled again yesterday in the opener against the Oakland A's. And we saw it against the Blue Jays. We saw it against against the Rays. The Yankees' power hasn't been there. They only have 1 extra base hit by anyone in that lineup not named Soto since the Blue Jays series, including yesterday's game. Just a couple stats here real quick. Aaron Judge, 3 for his last 28. Anthony Volpe, 3 for his last 29. Anthony Rizzo, 3 for his last 26. Gleyber Torres, 6 for his last 43. All those batters in the 100s there. Joel, there's something going on with this offense here. The power isn't there right now. You're not getting production really from Aaron Judge, which is where a lot of the ire and I guess anger for fans a little bit, because you hear the booing in the stands as well. I'm not sure it's warranted. Aaron Judge is one of the best players in baseball. I think he's going to turn it around. I know he's going to turn it around. But how are you seeing things right now with this Yankees offense, specifically with Aaron Judge as well?
Well, why don't we deal with the macro, which is the offense? The Yankees have had a bad offense now for 2+ seasons. They will claim that they scored the second. Well, it's not a claim. It's a fact. They averaged, I think, the second most runs in baseball in 2022. And they'll say that was a very good offense. I think that was an offense that was carried by an historic performance by Judge, that the length of the lineup was not particularly strong. And in the second half that year, without Judge, they wouldn't have even won the division. He carried them across the finish line. It wasn't a good 1-9 wrecking crew at all. It was a one-man band. Then last year, when Judge was hurt, it was completely exposed as a one-man band. And now we're in season 3 of this, which is when Soto doesn't hit, they're having problems. The names would suggest they should not be having these problems. I thought that they had addressed important issues here. I thought that they had created some lefty diversity in the lineup, but it's less lefty diversity if this is the version of Anthony Rizzo who you're going to get, and this is the version of Austin Wells you're going to get. The exchange with Wells is, I know the Yankees have praised the defensive strides he's made, but he's catching because you want him to be hitting from the left side, and he hasn't produced that. Verdugo has been relatively popless as a hitter, so they haven't had the diversity that I was expecting. Volpe looked like he had graduated to something between spring training and the opening of the season. And then for this last week, it has looked very 2023, Anthony Volpe, which was both good and bad. Homers and stolen bases, but low batting average and too many strikeouts. As far as Judge, I was not talking about the fans before. I was talking about the institution of the Yankees. Here's a situation where I will ask a question about fans in general, but it's become really bad at Yankee Stadium, which is, what is the booing about? Usually when we do things, I would hope that most people don't do things mindlessly and ask themselves, what am I doing and why? And I'm not exactly sure what the booing is supposed to accomplish. When I was a fan, I never booed. I don't understand it, but if I was going to boo, I would boo, is a guy playing hard? Is a guy playing smart? That kind of stuff. I don't think you have any questions about that. Aaron Judge has services rendered here. I remember, one time Mariano Rivera getting booed at Yankee Stadium. I'm like, what the fuck could this guy have done in his whole career where you would not be booing him right? Yeah. And I know fans don't want to believe this, but it does become a talking point among people. And I'm here to tell you, one of the great bullshit lines is, this is only New York. David Bednar got booed off the field in Pittsburgh 2 weeks ago. And people generally don't give a shit about baseball to the level in Pittsburgh that they do here. And booing happens. It happens just about every place. But there's an intensity and almost like a desire to get to it here and to pick out villains. And I think it's self-defeating.
Yeah.
It makes it a little harder to play here. And I think it makes it probably a little harder to convince somebody to play here if they have a 50-50 jump ball on where they want to go. Conversely, they're dealing, like they deal with a larger, tougher media group than in other places. But that's the establishment. There's a large media group because there's a lot of fans. Media is just a reflection of a fan base. The New York Post doesn't send us out for charity. We have multiple people at these games because we know that the interest is strong. Mm-hmm. If the interest wasn't strong, we wouldn't be there. That was long-winded. I'm not. Uh, Ultimately, I would assume Aaron Judge will get his act together and have a very strong season. I would feel less good about, say, Anthony Rizzo doing that.
Yeah.
And I would feel somewhat suspicious about, are you going to see this out of Austin Wells? And I thought those two guys, for their diversity and how they might be able to produce offense, are very important to the lineup.
Well, that's where I want to hit real quick. For that, the other guys, because other guys not named Soto and Judge, right? You got to get production out of them if you really want to lengthen this lineup. That goes without saying. But the Rizzo thing that I'm a little curious about is the power numbers haven't been there for him, and the ball doesn't seem to be jumping off his bat that it was in years prior. And I know we don't want to speculate here about like the concussion last year. Is he a different player? Because defensively, he's had some mishaps we talked about on previous episodes. He's one that I'm really concerned about. Obviously, we'll get to Gleyber Torres a little bit later. I want to talk about him, but the Volpe thing, a little bit of regression in the leadoff spot. So, Joel, that's where I wanted to ask you about the Judge Soto thing. Are the Yankees going to try and tinker with this lineup? How soon are they going to pull that ripcord and say we got to change this things up because it's not working right now? You go lifeless against the Oakland A's, which, no offense, Ethan Sears, I know, former Yankees prospect, like you can't be going scoreless against the Oakland A's.
Ethan Sears, I believe, works for the New York Post. JT Sears was
JP Sears.
I'm just trying to be helpful.
Islanders beat writer got me in my head right now. The Islanders blew a big lead last night. That's what I was thinking about.
Just to go back to Rizzo, just one quick second here, Ryan, is one of the things I always thought about watching Rizzo as a Cub and in those first few years as a Yankee is there's just some players, I think if you watch enough, you feel their confidence come off of them. I thought Anthony Rizzo was an incredibly confident player on both sides of the ball. One of those guys who ball's in his hand, he's confident, he knows what he's going to do with it. Tough play defensively, looks confident. Up at the plate, feels in control of an at bat, even against lefties. Chokes up, 2 strikes. He feels like he's a grinder. He's confident. He's in control. Am I letting the performance dictate it to me? He's felt less that. There were some at-bats against the lefties yesterday where I was watching and feeling like that doesn't feel like an historic Anthony Rizzo at-bat where it just feels like he's in the at-bat. Like he might strike out, he might ground out weakly, but you always felt watching it like the pitcher is really going to have to make great pitches because he's such a combative, confident person as a player. And I've seen less of that on it. As far as juggling the lineup, if you have a bunch of broken tools, you could use them in any order to fix an appliance in your house. You know what you have? You have broken tools. So, like, just this idea that LeMahieu is going to come back and be able to hit. Is he? How about this is if he comes back and he's got an 800 OPS, which he had kind of in the second half of last season, then if you hit him first or you hit him fifth, it's all going to be good. The Yankees just need more players hitting in the lineup. Tommy Hogan was making a point about how they've bunched runs this year. I wrote about it over the weekend. This lineup was supposed to be a 1-9 force for 1-9 innings. And even in the victories, you go back a couple of about a week ago when they beat Toronto, they come back late by scoring a bunch of runs in the 9th inning. When they beat Tampa Bay, they crowded runs into 1 inning. Now those runs count, the wins count, but they're not putting relentless pressure on the opposing team's pitching, which I think we saw earlier in the year. And it's what we expected from this lineup because we thought they had good diversity. We thought they had good hitters. We thought they had grinding hitters. And right now we're going and seeing a lot more 10 to 15 pitch innings against their offense, 1, 2, 3, easy, where suddenly you look up and you blink and go, wow, their offense has played 4 innings and done nothing. And it seems to be particularly bad against starting pitching this year, where they're letting starting pitching kind of like get through innings early, which, as a serial sport, you want to kind of punch that starter, start getting into the relief pitching so that the team has less options as a 3 or 4 game series is going on.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. That patience at the plate, the taking more pitches, you saw that to start the season. I think that was where, Yankees fans like me and Tommy were looking at, we're like, wow, this is a different approach. They're a little more patient at the plate. You saw Volpe taking his walks, and it does feel very different right now with the sample size growing. And again, I got to ask you, because I just want to get your thought on this. The thoughts on Judge. Are you good with him? You think he's going to get this right just because he is Aaron Judge? He is one of the best players in baseball, or are you starting to get concerned with what's going on with him in that 3 spot?
Yeah, I mean, if it's concern, it's mild concern. He doesn't feel like he's aged out. He is a hard worker. He is thoughtful. He is prideful. I'd be shocked if he doesn't figure it out. But these games count also, Ryan, and you're letting games. The pitching has generally kept them in every game.
Yep.
And so an Aaron Judge swing here or there changes a few games, and clearly that hasn't happened to we saw it. He had a terrible series up in Toronto and had one swing and helped win them a game. So make it 3 swings, make it 5 swings. Might they have another 2 wins on their board? He is that important to the team. They pay him that way, they play him that way, and they need him. So the quicker, I assume, he will get over this. Obviously, the quicker he does, the better off the Yankees will be.
Better off they will be. But Joel, let's go on to our next topic here that's interesting. Where I get to ask you, Joel, is there something that you saw from this Yankees team besides the offense, obviously, that had you saying, oh, that's interesting?
Yeah, I wrote about this for Post Plus this week. The Yankees going into the weekend were last in the major leagues in strikeout percentage out of the bullpen. Going into yesterday, they were 28th. This is a team, one of the reasons they've been very successful, say the last 15 years, and sometimes have been able to outplay a questionable offense or some injuries in their rotation, is that their bullpen has been deep and quality, and it's usually been built around power. But Betances, Miller, Chapman, Chad Green, and this group, the ball is in play. Now, I talked to Matt Blake, the pitching coach, about this. I talked to Jose Trevino, their main catcher, defensive catcher, about this. Both guys kind of turned down the nozzle on it. A few reasons. They've played some high contact teams early in the season: Cleveland, Arizona, Houston. They thought that was a factor. Teams are getting better at hitting, getting balls in play and concentrating on it. Though the strikeout rate across the league is still relatively static. It's down a little bit, but not enough to really make too many blinks about. I think that they have, in general, controlled exit velocity. They're very good at it. The ball's not hit hard against their relief group. And there's been some key losses. If Loizaga was pitching, the strikeout numbers would probably be higher. Tommy Kahnle led the team in strikeout percentage out of the bullpen last year. He hasn't pitched yet. Maybe at the second half of the season, they get Trevino or Efros back. Maybe in the second half of the season, they add Clayton Beeter, and or when Cole gets healthy, Luis Heel, who is striking out about 33%. He's striking out like 1 out of every 3 hitters he faces right now, and that could be a force in the bullpen. But you see, when one of the numbers that they've been very bad at is inherited runners. And usually the way you keep inherited runners from scoring is you strike people out and don't let those runners move. And they were just at about 50% at letting inherited runners score, which was the second worst in the sport.
Wow.
And so I think that, and to some degree, this hasn't been a problem this year. And Victor Gonzalez has been very good.
Yeah.
But Victor Gonzalez is like the second lowest strikeout rate of any reliever in the majors, who's pitched say 7, 8, 9 games at this point. So, you gave up Wandy Peralta, who was a guy who struck out about 22% of hitters and really dominated lefty hitters. And so far, Caleb Ferguson has been ineffective, and Victor Gonzalez is just not a strikeout guy. It's just something I'm watching as the season goes along. And if they're in it, and I assume they'll be in it, my suspicion is they'll acquire a power reliever or 2 at the deadline.
Definitely a different dynamic with that bullpen, Joel. It's a great point by you, is that they aren't that getting, they don't have those power pitchers and arms that you mentioned, and with the loss of Loizaga, to your point, and even Birdie, because Birdie seemed to get some of the guys out by
Birdie was
strikeout
leading
too.
the team this year in strikeout percentage, and he's down. But he was always a worrisome factor because he just can't stay healthy. Nobody's ever doubted Nick Birdie's arm. It's why he keeps getting shots and people keep trying to rehab him. Is the arm talent is obvious. The ability to stay healthy is also obvious.
And it definitely makes for more interesting late inning situations when the Yankees aren't pitching to strike out and they are pitching to contact a little bit, because the Clay Holmes experience has been, puts you on the edge of your seat a little bit if you're a Yankees fan every time he comes out there in the ninth inning. He doesn't ever seem to have a clean inning in the ninth. But, I think we were all spoiled growing up watching Mariano Rivera. There will be another one. It just doesn't feel like there's going to be another one like him. So, it's ridiculous for me to say, but the Yankees have that high pedestal of what a closer is. Clay Holmes, I'm always on my edge of my seat. I'm like, oh boy, here we go. There's the hit. There's the walk.
Pretty good, Ryan.
He's still really good. I know.
Since they acquired him, he's probably been one of the 10 best relief pitchers in the sport. I had a friend, just to interject this, 2 years ago when the Mets were going into the playoffs, my friend said to me, I just don't trust Diaz. He's a big Met fan. And I said, yeah, well, what does that mean? It's like, he goes, yeah, I just don't trust him. I go, he's probably the best reliever in the major leagues. And he goes, yeah. I go, so I said to him, I'll call him Phil here. His name's not Phil. I said, Phil, here's a list on Fangraphs of the 50 best relief pitchers this year. Pick your guy. You could acquire him to pitch the ninth inning. Who would you take? And he goes, well, and I go, Phil, this is the universe of available relief pitchers. We can't just create somebody out of whole cloth to make you feel better who strikes out everybody on 3 pitches and you go home and you have a beer and you're fine. Within the universe of relief pitchers, Clay Holmes is a very good one. Top 10, top 15, top 20. When you consider what the acquisition costs were for him, it's one of the better trades in Brian Cashman's 25 plus years running the team. But they have kind of bled relief pitchers these last few years. Their conceit is that they find guys like Clay Holmes, like Ian Hamilton, like Wandy Peralta. They're going to have to find some more, or they're going to have to change a couple of current young starters like Hill or like Beater or someone like that into relievers. I'll throw in one other guy. In 2022, Ron Marinaccio was pretty good.
Yeah.
And then last year he wasn't. They could really use to rediscover that 2022 version of him, because he does, with his changeup, strike out a lot of people.
No, it's a great point, Joel. And I know what you're saying about Clay Holmes. I'm looking forward to seeing how the rest of the season goes, but I'm sure they're going to be acquiring someone in the midseason before we get there, but there's a lot more season to play. Let's go to Radio Irrational, Joel, where we get to ask you a take from fans about a certain thing with this Yankees team, and you tell me whether it's a radio or rational thought. Gleyber Torres, I believe his days are numbered in New York. We've heard the trade rumors in previous seasons. His season has not gotten off to a good start at all. He is in a contract walk year. Defensively, he has not looked great. Offensively, it's been abysmal. And I don't know if he has that confidence and swagger that Gleyber Torres usually plays with. I'm not seeing that, like you mentioned about Rizzo before. I'm not seeing that from Gleyber Torres. And part of me wonders, is Gleyber Torres a good trade piece at the deadline to get another arm, whether it be a bullpen piece or starting pitcher, because he's in a contract year, and because, not to mention, you're seeing the promotion of Oswaldo Cabrera, who can play second base, could play short, but is hitting the hell out of the ball right now in the nine-hole spot. And when you get DJ LeMahieu back, you could put him at third and Oswaldo at second. You could absorb the blow of trading Gleyber Torres. What do you think?
Yeah, I assume at some point you also might get Oswald Peraza to be part of this. Look, when you say a guy's days are numbered, his days are numbered, because I would find it surprising if the Yankees re-sign him. So he's in his walk year, and he's either, I doubt he'll be a 2025 Yankee. So that would be kind of days are numbered. As far as trading him at the deadline, well, if this is the version of him, it isn't like there'll be 29 other teams going, where do I sign up for this? but I would also put him to some degree in the Judge category. He's smack in his prime. The last 2 years have been very good, where he's hit the ball really well. When he uses the big part of the park, he generally hits well. It's probably very much in his head that we're 3+ weeks into the season and he doesn't have a home run yet. If you run your finger down the list of people who are in that category who generally have some power, I think you'd be surprised. Nick Castellanos, Jose Abreu. It stuck out to me the other day when I was looking at who doesn't have home runs right now. They're all human beings. I'm sure it begins to play on them. I would put into almost a Judge-like category. I'd be surprised if Torres doesn't hit well for an extended period this season. He hit well last year. He's 26, 27. Why would he not hit well? He suddenly forgot how to hit. He's letting the walk year get to him. Maybe, but I would think if they're going to have a good long offense this year, that would include Torres, and I would just stick with the idea that the best Yankee team probably has guys like Cabrera and/or Peraza as play a lot but move around.
Fair enough. With Gleyber, I know what you're saying. He's been a good hitter for the last couple of years, but to your point, is the walk year getting to him? I don't know, but I'm not seeing the same confidence that he's had in years past, but he could hit out of this slump. We are still only a month in the season, but that was the Radio Rational take. Like, to your point, he isn't a walk year, so his days probably are numbered, but I do wonder if he becomes a part of that trade chip in the deadline, because we've heard Brian Cashman dangle him before in previous deadlines. So just feels like that could be a possibility if Cabrera continues to tear the cover off the ball. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's few things I put at 0%. So I would not put it at 0%. Could there be you need offense, we need a relief pitcher dance? Sure. But if he's that kind of offensive performer where another team wants him, the Yankees will probably want him also, and would probably be more willing to use minor league depth to go get a relief pitcher or whatever it is they need. Nothing is 0%. The idea that some team is willing to give up something valuable for a walk-year player who isn't performing, doesn't happen a lot.
Fair enough. Joel, let's go to Hoganalytics, where our PA Tommy Hogan gives us a stat. I believe it's gonna be offensive related. Let's bring in Tommy.
What's up, guys? Yeah, it is offensive related. I wanted to, because the tenure of the show has kind of changed in the last couple episodes. High on the Yankees, high on the offense to start the year. Obviously, you see them sweep the Astros, and you get a little intoxicated by that. But a line of demarcation for me, I think, is when the Yankees moved Anthony Volpe to leadoff. In the 12 games before they moved into leadoff, they were 10-2 and averaged 5 runs a game. Since moving into leadoff, they're 5-6, averaging 3.7 runs per game. He's 9 for 44 batting leadoff this year. His average has dropped from 375 to 286. And this isn't new for Volpe. Last season, he also struggled when moving to leadoff. In 28 starts, he had a 191 batting average, and they averaged 3.9 runs per game, going 14-14. Games he didn't bat leadoff, a little bit better, 68 and 66, 4.2 runs per game. So Joel, I ask you, when does the sample size become big enough where you can say, okay, Volpe puts pressure on himself when he is batting leadoff, and it's time to move him back down, let him really get his confidence and know what kind of player he is before putting him in the leadoff? Because we said last week, that is where he belongs in the future. But when is it time to do it? And can you say, okay, it's not yet because it's not working?
Yeah, so, I mean, I don't know if you have it in front of you. So he's batted leadoff, what'd you say, 12 games, 11 games, something like that?
11 games now it's been.
How was he in those first 5 games hitting leadoff?
I mean, he had 5 hits in 2 games back-to-back. He had a 3-hit game and then a 2-hit game.
So in other words, the pressure didn't get to him right away. It's getting to him now. Or he forgot how to hit leadoff after being really good at it for 5 games. Well, like if I remember in those 5 games, he got some hits. He was drawing walks. He was having long at-bats. For about half of this sample size, this feels like number in chase of a theory, as opposed to something that is comfortable. He has ultimately he was hitting about 400. I think if you put the Yankees on truth serum before this season and said, would you take 255 from Anthony Volpe this year, would say like a mid 700 OPS and the same kind of defense base stealing from last year, they'd go, where do we sign up for that? Now, again, like he had the kind of opening that draws excitement to it, but almost everything kind of seeks its level over 162 games. He's in a bad period now. I think there's going to be swing and miss in his game. I thought he had cut some of it out by changing his, swing plane and philosophy. We'll see. But I don't think this is about leadoff, Tommy, because half the leadoff period so far, he was good at it. I'll go back to what I said before to Ryan. If you have broken tools, you move them all around. Like, hey, let's pull it out of a bag. Who's leading off today? Soto. Oh, great. Who's hitting second? That's a problem. Who's hitting third? That's a problem. Who's hitting fourth? They need a lot of guys in this lineup who haven't performed to this point and have had some issues in recent years to do much better. Otherwise, they're in trouble whoever bats wherever. It can't be Gladys Knight in the Pips. It can't be Juan Soto in the Pips. It's got to be a lot of players performing well wherever they hit in the lineup. I don't think Anthony Volpe, who seems to be a strong-willed, confident player, is suddenly like, I'm hitting leadoff and I've lost my confidence or my way.
But it goes back to last year. Like the numbers even support it.
But his numbers were just bad last year, Tommy. Like he struck out a lot. If you're talking about that they averaged like 4.2 runs a game when he didn't hit leadoff, I mean, that's shit. This is a lineup that needs to average 5 runs or more. I think we've got a number in search of a theory instead of a theory backed up by numbers. Do you really think like so I'll ask you this, Tommy. When Anthony Volpe bats leadoff, do you really think something happens to him where he goes, wow, I'm hitting leadoff. I've got so much more pressure on me. I've got to perform. So I'm going to do it in these first 5 games, but then I'm going to suddenly forget how to do it.
I think when players hit leadoff, they change their mindset and their approach at the plate because now they see that. It's a case where a guy will hit cleanup. We've seen it with Gleyber Torres at points in his career. When he hits higher up in the order, he changes his approach. I do believe that there's something to the fact that he may change his approach.
But why wouldn't he have changed right away? Why did he have to test those first 5 games?
He was hot. He was hot when he got moved up. So
Wasn't it against Miami, if I'm correct?
It was against Miami.
Miami's got shit pitching, Joel, if we're being honest.
Yeah, so the answer is probably he's just gotten cold, as opposed to, or like there's now an adaptation to the adaptation. He made a change. Smart teams like the Rays are going to go to town on the changes, find where the new holes are, and it's going to be up to Volpe wherever he bats 1, 2, 6, 9 to now adapt to the adaptation. I find it hard to believe that he was taking good at bats, including early on batting leadoff, regardless of who the opposing pitchers were. They were good at bats. And now he's taking bad at bats, and it's about the leadoff. I would assume it's about an adaptation to an adaptation.
That was Tommy about Hoganalytics, about Anthony Volpe. We'll be interested to see, again, like DJ LeMay was supposed to start a rehab this week. We will see what the Yankees do with that, if they do tinker with that lineup, which we've asked Joel about, and we will see what happens. But Joel, I want to go to
lineup order is not unimportant, but it's not nearly as important as I think the average person thinks it is.
Yeah, no, I'd be interested to hear what
you try to hit your best hitters as often as possible.
Yeah,
that's the theory, and you try to create some protection and lefty-righty diversity to make it more difficult for the opposing manager to match up after the 6th inning. And aside from that, it really isn't this great alchemy that I think most fans think, oh, if this guy was only hitting 3rd instead of 6th, the world would be better. There'd be no war, and the Yankees would average 6 runs a game.
No war. All right, Joel, let's close out the show with Joel's notebook. We got the news last week that John Sterling retired immediately. Legendary career for the radio voice for the Yankees. I wanted to hear if you had any good stories about Mr. John Sterling.
Yeah, I got lots of good John Sterling stories. So, we're obviously on some time limit here. I can't give you all. But he has been a part of my life. I grew up when he was, I believe it was on WMCA. He had one of the first sports talk radio shows. I used to listen with my dad in the living room. It was such a novel thing to have somebody talking. It isn't like now, multiple stations doing 24/7. Like to have somebody doing sports talk was really something. I heard him on Islander games and net games. I love Julius Erving. So when I was a kid, Dr. J, and he was announcing those great ABA net teams early on. And then John became the Yankee radio voice in 1989. That's the year I started on the Yankee beat. I was on from 89 to 95. So I was on the road all the time with John, etc. So I want to tell you a story. I'll finish this off. Really nice story about John Sterling, which is my mom passed away on the last day of the 1998 season. I was in a press box in Atlanta. The Mets were in the midst of losing 5 straight games to end the year. And essentially, I think they only had to win one of them, and they would have found their way in the playoffs as a wild card. Of course, in Atlanta, they got swept because they always got swept in Atlanta. And it was so long ago, no cell phones, no internet. So I literally get paged to a phone in the press box at a stadium 3 stadiums ago, for the Braves. Actually, 2 stadiums. I think they might have been in Turner by then. I find out that my mom has passed away. I fly home. Anybody who listens to this maybe or has read over the time how important my dad is in my life. My dad was a man of a certain age. He had gone from his mom to the U.S. Army to my mom. And now he's on his own. I was very worried about him. And my dad was somebody who believed in work. And so for the funeral and to be with my dad, the Yankees played the Rangers in the first round of the playoffs that year. I didn't cover that. And my dad actually, because he believed, he wanted my career. He lived through my career a lot and he believed in work. He was like, you got to go back. You got to go back. And I'm like, Dad, I'm not going back until I know you're okay. And he's like, I'm okay. And I said, okay, I got a plan. The Yankees open the next round against Cleveland and New York. I'll stay here after the game. I'll be here before the game. I'll be here after the game. Then I'm going to fly you to Cleveland. And you'll go to the games there. And this way you'll stay in my hotel room with me. We'll be together, etc. So now I have to figure out what am I doing with my dad at the ballpark because I'm not going to be around him. And Michael Kay and I know each other dating back to before we were on the Yankee beat together. We know each other 40 years. He's a dear friend. He's in the radio booth with Sterling. And so I say, Mike, can my dad stay in the radio booth? And him and John go, absolutely. And so for 3 games in Cleveland, my dad sat in the back of the radio booth and watched the games with John and Mike. And their kindness to my father for those 3 days was overwhelming. It was as bad a time as my dad ever had in his life. He had lost my mom and his wife. And they just treated him like one of the guys. Him and Sterling were kind of about the same age. Sinatra guys, movies, things like that. And the Yankees lose game 3. And I'll never forget, my dad says to Sterling before game 4, my father loved Orlando Hernandez. And he goes, Hernandez shoves it up their ass tonight and they don't lose another game in the playoffs. And Hernandez shoved it up the Indians' ass and the Yankees finished the playoffs 7-0, won the World Series. And every time my dad would come every year to spring training with me, little with the Mets, little with the Yankees, we'd go across the state so he could see, loved baseball, see a little both. Every time he'd see Sterling, he'd go, remember I told you? And Sterling remembered my dad, would talk to my dad each time. And at Sterling's retirement thing on Saturday, I went up to him and I just keep in mind, my dad's been dead for 3 years. Sterling probably he had to stop going to spring training. He was ill at the end of his life. Sterling probably hasn't seen him for 6 or 7 years. And I went, John, I retold the story. I said how much I appreciated it. And he goes, oh, that was easy. I loved Murray. He remembered my dad's name. And he goes, oh, I loved Murray. That was one of the easiest things I ever did. And so I'm forever, you think about the kindnesses you get in your life. The kindness of Michael Kay and John Sterling at a terrible moment for my family, especially my dad, very, very, very meaningful for me.
That's a very classy thing, and that John did and Michael did, and it's a great story, Joel. Thank you so much for sharing. Like that's John Sterling, and that's him personified. He's professional. He's classy. Just he's going to be forever in our hearts as Yankees fans. We grew up listening to him on the radio, his memorable calls. But when you hear the stories off the call and who he is as a person, I think that just gives you even more of an image of this is such a great person, and it was such a great guided to talk Yankee games with us as we're listening to our favorite team growing up. Thank you for sharing, Joel.
Remind me when we're stuck, when we do one of these at the end, I could do more John Sterling stories. Keep in mind, I once did radio when Susan was away for Jewish holidays. I was the color guy for 2 radio games. So I got stories from there. John had a talk show for a while where he did it literally from a bar. I got stories from there. I got a lot. So when we're stuck for a story and, I'm having an adult moment, Ryan, go, just tell a John Sterling story.
Okay, that's no problem. He's Joel Sherman. I'm Ryan Sampson. That's the Pinstripe Post. If you're watching us here on the YouTube channel, hit that like and subscribe button. Comment on what you're thinking about Joel's thoughts with the Yankees. Is the offense his problem? Is Judge a problem? What's going to turn it around? We'll talk about the bullpen. We'll talk about Volpe. We'll address all those things. Joel, thank you so much, man, as always.
All right, Ryan, all the best.